Welcome to Loud and Clear, a podcast dedicated to amplifying the voices of women in music. I'm your host, Olivia Adams, and I'm excited to talk with our guest today, and I know you are going to love her as well. Today, I'm speaking with Maestro Janna Sailor. In June 2016, Janna founded the Vancouver-based Allegra Chamber Orchestra, one of the only all-female classical orchestras in the world, an ensemble dedicated to creating opportunities for women and minorities in the music industry, with a mandate of social action through music. The orchestra has been featured on CBC Radio, German Public Radio, Radio ICI, the Strad magazine, the Violin Channel, the Walrus, the Hub magazine, as well as many other publications and media outlets across North America and Europe. Janna has conducted major orchestras and ensembles, including the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, the Calgary Philharmonic, the Toronto Mendelssohn Choir, and the Vancouver Bach Choir, among others. Janna has held conducting positions with the Vancouver Philharmonic Orchestra, the National Academy Orchestra of Canada, and the Vancouver Youth Symphony Orchestra. In addition to conducting, Janna enjoys a diverse career as a violinist, delving into contemporary world and early music, jazz, and classical crossover, in addition to chamber and solo engagements. Ensembles she has performed with include the Vancouver Opera Orchestra, Vancouver Intercultural Orchestra, the Pacific Baroque Orchestra, and Toffel Music. Janna has served as the concertmaster with both the Montreal-based L'Orchestre de la Francophonie and the National Academy Orchestra of Canada. Welcome, Janna. It's so good to have you here today. How are you doing?
Thanks so much, Olivia. Such a pleasure. So much fun to have this opportunity to chat with you and share a little bit of what I do.
I'm really excited about it. So I like to start all of my interviews with the same question, and that's, can you tell us more about how you went down the path of being a musician? What was that origin story like for you?
Well, I started violin when I was 3 years old, and many years later, my mother ran into my very first violin teacher and said, "Oh, I'm Janna Sailor's mom," and she said, "Oh, Janna Sailor was the last 3-year-old I ever taught." So apparently I had no plans to play the violin. And there's all kinds of stories of me, wedging myself underneath, the coffee table and finding hiding places and to do just about anything to get out of playing the violin. But that was a long time ago. And, it eventually grew on me. And I think a lot of that had to do with actually joining the Saskatoon Youth Orchestra when I was 12. And I really discovered the orchestra from a whole another perspective of actually being within it instead of just watching and participating. I'd grown up in Saskatoon and watching the Saskatoon Symphony. So now when I come home to conduct, it's kind of like a weird time warp and, and a little bit surreal to come back and conduct one of the very first orchestras I'd ever seen perform live. And I really found, my place of belonging within the orchestra and loved what we could create together. And it was so much more so than, what I could do on my own in my practice room. And I guess that's where my love affair with the orchestra began. I went on and did my bachelor's and my master's and an artist diploma in violin performance, and started working with Vancouver Opera and working as a professional freelancer in Vancouver early on in my academic career, and further dove deeper into the orchestral experience through opera and other aspects of a busy and diverse freelance life. And then things kind of changed suddenly when I was quite badly injured in 2 car accidents, and I was having recurring neurological issues and concussion issues and pain when I was playing that I couldn't really get to the bottom of, even after years of physio and medical attention. And it just came to the point where I couldn't hold down a full-time violin position. And as fate would have it, I was also on staff as an assistant manager with the Vancouver Youth Symphony. And I was kind of the, assistant manager. I was kind of the everything girl. Yeah. and just filled in whatever blanks needed to be taken care of that day. And we were in a staff meeting. I'm there in a lot of pain and feeling pretty bummed about my career. And one of our conductors had a family emergency and had to just walk off the job on 3 days notice. And they said, okay, so can you just conduct those two orchestras for this week? Just for this week, we can't find anybody at such short notice. Don't worry, we'll get somebody for next time. Just do whatever you want with the orchestras, babysit. So I was terrified. I'd taken all of the conducting courses I could that were available at the time at UBC, mostly because I didn't want to take theory, and it seemed it seemed more fun. Well, I guess who's now working on theory, so that's me. But anyway, so I'd taken conducting courses, but I wanted to do it, to become a better orchestral musician, to kind of understand what the heck was going on the podium, and like I said, get out of theory. But long story short, they never ended up finding a replacement. They just kept making me conduct. They're like, no, you're doing fine. Just keep doing whatever you're doing. And I was terrified and felt like I was only a few steps ahead of the kids. And, I'd go home and feverishly study up these, the little kid music and all this. But then by the end of the season, I had 2 other conducting job offers. And I wasn't really in a position to turn it down because I didn't have any other work and I hated it. So I just kept conducting. But it was something that was really uncomfortable for me. Once again, I loved working with the orchestra and the musicians, but I didn't feel comfortable being in, a position of authority, being the center of attention. I was someone that was very happy being buried in a violin section in a pit underneath the stage. My opera orchestra job was my dream job. I wasn't comfortable making decisions and expressing my opinion, and all of those things that you have to do when you're in a leadership position. And you're not even conducting a little kids orchestra. They're not always going to agree with the decisions that are made or understand your artistic vision. But actually, that was the very best training I think I could have ever received as a conductor, because anything that could go wrong would go wrong. And also, I was learning alongside the kids, and I learned how to create a safe atmosphere for learning and co-creating, and which is kind of the basis of my philosophy of creating my own orchestra and my own projects, which is first of all to create a safe space for everyone to create and be fully themselves and fully empowered in their skill set. So that's kind of a quick and dirty rundown of my career and how I got where I am.
Incredible. And I think one of the reasons why I love starting with this question is because I think it's so important for young musicians to kind of know how there are varied paths to get to where you'll ultimately get to. Very rarely do people stick in the one job that they set out to do at the very beginning when they were 18 and starting university, right? And there are circumstances like car accidents, that alter your life and your ability to be able to do one job. And sometimes circumstances create these new opportunities for us. And so I think it's really important to know that it's not always a straight path to success.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not always meant to be.
Yes. I think we learn so many things along the way and taking different roads. So, which leads me to my next question. You had mentioned that you've started your own orchestra and you're an incredible conductor and the founder of the Allegra Chamber Orchestra. And am I right in saying that it's one of the only all-female orchestras in the world?
That's correct. Yeah.
Can you tell us more about how you started Allegra and what those early years looked like and how did you get going?
Certainly. So we founded in 2016, and I was going through a thing within the context of the music industry. I was feeling very frustrated with the politics and the work atmosphere and kind of the toxicity that I was being exposed to in my various workplaces, and general disenchantment with working professionally as a musician. And I was getting to the point where I was like, well, if this is what it's like, I don't want to do this. I want to move on and find a healthier career that sustains me in a different way. Because to be honest, there wasn't a lot of positive aspects other than being able to create music in the professional that I had been working in. And around that time, I had coffee with a friend of mine mine who had just founded a beautiful organization called Music Heals, which is an organization that works with existing organizations such as schools, care homes, residential, like seniors, residential homes, things like that, and goes in, assesses their needs, and works with them to create a music therapy program within that meets their needs, pairs them with, the right kinds of therapists and resources that can, assist with children with learning disabilities and ADHD, or military servicemen with stress disorders and things like that. So I was just so moved and by their work and what they were doing that I just wanted to help. I was like, yes, this is what I know music can do for people. This is what why I became a musician is because it's such a powerful, amazing thing. And so I decided to just put together a little benefit concert at the end of the season. I was like, let's just put it out there to my colleagues. We'll play some music and raise some money. It'll be my little contribution to Music Heals that will make me feel better about what I'm doing and contribute to this cause. And so I wrote an email detailing what Music Heals does, and I sent it out to just a wide swath of my colleagues and put out a call for musicians. And so responses started to come in, and it was all women. It turned out that there was so much of a response to it that I was like, oh wait, we could just grab a set of timpani and another trumpet and could play Beethoven. It's like we're actually an orchestra. We're not just like a chamber group, and at first I thought, this will be fun. We'll play it up. We'll make a joke that we're all women and we'll serve chocolates and, wear fun shoes and just make it like girls' night out at the orchestra. But when we got together, it was such a powerful thing. It kind of opened up dialogue that I hadn't had prior to this with my male identifying colleagues about how they were feeling in the workplace. And it really became apparent that we needed a safe place to just be women, just be female musicians, and to just create. It was in 2016, which was kind of the height of the Me Too movement. So in just being an all-female orchestra, and even our first couple of concerts, we played music and we gave it to charity. It engendered a lot of negativity. And even just the fact that we were all female musicians and coming out and saying, we're an all-female orchestra, people seemed to take a great deal of offense to that. And it was a very sensitive time for gender issues. If you think back to 2016, it's almost ancient history now. But so it was very interesting, and we went through a lot of discussions about who we wanted to be and how we wanted to be. And, we created a mandate, and basically we pretty much stuck with it of women helping women through music. And so we raised the seed funds for a music therapy program for a women's shelter that we still support. So we are a fully professional orchestra, and a portion of our ticket proceeds always go to a designated charity. And we do manage to pay ourselves. We are paid through the union, and we just make that part of everything that we do is giving back to society through not only artistically, every concert has a social action message or messaging, and we champion the works of female and minority composers, but we also wanted to do something practical to give back as well. And over the years, I received, as I mentioned, it seemed to bring out a lot of the ugliest things and sentiments in people in regards to gender and gender issues and equality and all of this. And so I received hate mail for about a year, but that has tapered off. And I think we had a mission and a mandate set out to do it. And I don't think people expected us to actually do it and to stick with it. And we have. And, with any organization, we've had our growing pains and we've almost gone under. But I think our strength is in the truth in which it was founded on. And we keep coming back to those principles. And we're not like other organizations and professional arts organizations, professional orchestras in what we strive to do. And, as an orchestra, we've given tens of thousands of dollars to charity. And that's something that I'm proud of as a human, but even more proud of that there are others that have the same vision for music and what it can do and the power of music that ultimately brings us together and can be the source of social change. And that I had to prove to myself that was possible.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that you have received so much backlash for an organization such as this, because that was one of the things that drew me to your work and the work of Allegra was all of the advocacy work that you do, that the concerts are open to the partners of the organizations that you work with, that you're serving the vulnerable communities and sort of breaking down that barrier, because classical music often gets this hierarchy, can be put on a pedestal of it's like, oh, it's high society, and that's really not what it's about. Music is about sharing, right? It's about the community. And so I love that you're doing your part to sort of break down those barriers that often inhibit people from experiencing music. Yeah. Another incredible program that you run is the Composer Mentorship Program, where you're connecting early career composers with established composers. Could you tell us more about that program and what that mentorship program looks like?
Yes, absolutely. I was just working on it actually before our conversation, and I'm so excited. It's going to launch again in January, and we are looking forward to the possibilities that working with composers. New music has always been a part of what I've done as a musician when I was a violinist and also as a conductor. And that's been one of the most rewarding aspects of my career, is seeing a piece of music come to life, like realizing that and co-creating that with a composer. And I love the process. I'm someone that loves the workshopping and the rehearsal phase just as much as the performance phase. So we get to work with these wonderful composers over a 6-month period, and they are paired with some of our amazing mentors that have ties to Allegra, that are award-winning and established composers, have very distinct voices in the field. And it's really wonderful. We have monthly check-ins and monthly professional development workshops, and it's so cool to see the little germ of an idea to just the end result. And so, of course, like everything, our last iteration of it happened during COVID. So it was all online, but we learned a lot of things from that. And actually it's shaped how we are moving forward and being able to open it up to Canada wide because we'll deliver it virtually. They can work with their mentors from wherever, and they work very closely with members of the Allegra Composer Incubator Ensemble. So they have the chance to dive in and work with our harpist, Albertina Chan, for example, and ask about all these techniques. And there were like all kinds of really cool extended techniques that were incorporated as a result, and to work really closely with percussion. And actually Mary Alice Conrad, one of our composer incubator participants, actually invented some percussion instruments in collaboration with Katie Reif, one of our percussionists, for the last composer incubator in 2021. Amazing. So, and you can actually see all of those performances on our YouTube channel. It's we rolled it into FestivELLE, which is our biannual festival of female identifying composers. So like I said, because of COVID, it was all online, but we were able to get some really lovely video, and all of the composers were so different. They all had really distinct voices and things to say, really wonderful reflections on life and music and humanity were just reflected. It was really moving to actually get together. We'd all been apart working on this project, and then to finally come together after 6 months and actually be in the room with the musicians and with the composers, all spread apart, of course, you'll remember. And it was initially supposed to be a full orchestra, but then with limits of numbers, we worked with a smaller group of 7, which actually I think was a nice intimate group for them to really develop rapport with the musicians. And musicians were really, really invested in bringing these works to life. So we will be opening up that application process in the next couple weeks. And so you'll be able to find that on our website, allegrachamberorchestra.com. And we welcome all minority composers to apply from around Canada. It is funded by the Canada Council, so we can only extend it to Canadian composers at this point, but we're hoping to be able to broaden that in the next couple of years as the program grows and hopefully expands to offer more to more folks.
That's amazing. That's so incredible. And I think invaluable to have that mentorship experience if you're a young composer. So when you're doing that, you mentioned the Composer Incubator Ensemble. Is that what you called it? Does that mean that each of the composers is going to be writing for a specific set of instruments? There are parameters around each of those. Is that correct?
That's right. And we tried to like mimic what it would be like if you were to receive a commission from, say, a professional orchestra, and you have a timeline, you have a time limit, you have a specific ensemble, specific strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, so we tried as much as possible to kind of imitate a professional commission, and they work with me, they bounce ideas off me, they get all kinds of feedback, maybe more than they would like. But it was, they were just, so we had 6 composers in the last iteration of the program, and they were all just incredibly open and willing to learn and co-create. And it's still one of my career highlights, was working with those amazing composers that have gone on. And because the other part of it was we wanted them to have a set of skills that they could take with them. So we have workshops that we offer as well on how to promote yourself, on how to work with the CMC, on how to leverage your social media and how to get your works out there, on work-life balance, and also how to present yourself professionally. And in addition to having like a professional recording by, a set of professional musicians and a professional set of parts made for them by the CMC that they can then, send off to other ensembles, we wanted to give them some of those practical skills that are maybe not taught in school. You're so busy working on the technical aspects of your craft, which is huge, that there's these other aspects of the music business that are constantly evolving. So we had professionals from various fields within classical music, concert presenters and librarians and things come in and do presentations from their experience and their, what would be required of a composer, or for you to make this leap into composing for professional orchestras. And a lot of them have gone on and done really well. Maria Ellis Conrad has had a number of premieres, Maria Eduarda Martinez as well, just to name a few, and they're getting commissions and kind of using them. I know Ashley Seward is having opera workshopped. So it's really exciting for us to feel like we were a small part of their success. Obviously, they're tremendously talented on their own, but to be able to collaborate with them and perhaps add to their toolkit was a tremendous honor for us.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. And you touched on it a little bit, but I'm curious, is how has your job shifted in the pandemic? Were you able to still run concerts spaced out and streamed, or how did that look for Allegra?
Yeah, well, we had to go pretty much entirely online, and that was due to some of the restrictions in BC and the performing venues in BC. So our venues that we work in, thankfully, the city of Vancouver was able to create a safe working space for us within the civic theaters so that we could go on recording and doing our live streaming and virtual things, but not to the point of having a public concert. So that was a tremendous learning curve for me. And, I'd never done that much. Well, I don't think any of us had ever done much video or live streaming and like working with Opus 59 films to call shots and, work a concept and presentation. And yeah, shout out to Opus 59 Films that did an amazing job did all of our streaming for FestivELLE. And then also workshops that were supposed to be live and in person. We put all of those there online, but we were able to reach a lot more people. Like, I think we're all kind of discovering that there was a mixed blessing there in that, what would have happened in the meeting space at CMC could now reach whoever would like to join us from across Canada, in some cases the globe. So I feel like in a way it was really great for our visibility. When we look at our analytics and see who's watching and listening, who knows how accurate those are, but it forced us to get materials out there beyond our established audience, which was really interesting for us, and to constantly be able to reimagine things. It was challenging for creativity. You have these certain parameters set around. It's like, okay, what is actually the meat and potatoes of this project? What is the essence of this project? We can still get that to come across by focusing on these certain things, and capturing that as best we can in a live stream or an educational opportunity. So I think the biggest change was it made me really, really focus on what we were trying to do, what were the most important aspects, and what we wanted the audience to take away in a very short period of time, because you don't have an entire concert of people of attention, right? So, with live streaming, you have to just get right to the point. And yeah, you don't have an hour and a half for it to unfold and to take the audience on a journey. So that was really interesting. And those are skills that I'm going to try and incorporate and take with me into my live performances. Like those are really useful, powerful tools.
Absolutely. I think that COVID forced musicians to get more creative, and it forced us to learn or use some of those skills that we maybe weren't using. Like I had no idea when I was doing my master's that I would end up being video and audio editor and, putting together virtual streams and what that looks like. But I mean, I have been a part of putting together entire virtual concerts before, and those are skills that I had to learn or develop, but I'm so grateful that I have them now. Yeah. But it's a different experience and nothing beats live. So you're working with the SSO on a concert of ABBA music for their pop series. So can you tell us more about that concert? Are there going to be singers with the orchestra? Are the arrangements new? Can you tell us anything?
For sure. It's going to be a lot of fun. I actually really enjoy doing shows like this because chances are there are quite a few people in the audience that have never been to an orchestra concert before. They just see ABBA and they're like, I'm in, and they don't expect it to be amped up to 11 with like a full-size symphony orchestra.
Yeah.
So it's presented with the singers from Jeans and Classics. And I actually had an opportunity to do a portion of this show this summer with the National Academy Orchestra in a concert in tribute to Boris Brott, who was one of my mentors. So it kind of has an extra like layer of memory and meaning. He also was a big fan of engaging the audience, and that was a show that he had programmed. And then of course he passed on, and so I stepped in along with some of my other colleagues to cover for those programs. But I love the music of ABBA. It was kind of one of my first forays into pop music, and that was courtesy of a turntable and record collection that our elderly neighbor down the street was getting rid of, and she gave it to me. It was a complete revelation. There were, along with like every single ABBA record, there was all kinds of Elton John and David Bowie and Creedence Clearwater Revival, like all these things that just blew my mind. But ABBA was my favorite, and I remember my little sister and she knew how to work the turntable, and she would sometimes she would wake up and turn on the turntable in the middle of the night, blast ABBA and scare everybody half to death. But one of my most treasured memories with my sister is us dancing around to ABBA and singing, and she was like 3 years old and she knew all the ABBA words. And so I think that's also speaks to the power of music, that so many generations later, people love this music. Yeah. And you see all ages of audience members there enjoying the music and dancing and being connected by this golden thread that goes back to who knows where and connects all of us, and that we all love it together. And that's a nice feeling. And much as I love new music and the old war horses of the classical music repertoire, you don't always get that feeling.
Yes. I love that. And I think the energy in the room is just different in those pop concerts. It's a different feeling, and it's so fun. So I'm going to shift to one of my last questions here. Is I'm curious if we have early career conductors listening in, or we have young musicians that want to get into the field of being a conductor one day, what's some advice that you can pass on to them? How do you get started? What does practice look like when you don't have a group to work with? Do you just practice in front of your mirror, or what does that look like? How do you develop those skills?
Yeah, practicing is ridiculous. It's challenging. Absolutely. I'll get to that in a moment. But I think jump on any and every opportunity to do whatever kind of music you are presented with, because whether that's playing or conducting or participating in a choir, because being a conductor requires you to be the everything person. You have to be able to understand and interpret and be able to jump into any and all styles and genres, not just the classical repertoire, and dig deep as far as talk to musicians. Go up to them. I've never had a musician be rude to me or be like, no, I'm not going to tell you about my instrument. I would go up to, when in my earliest days, and I still do this, go up to percussionists and be like, so how does this work? And what were you doing? I saw you doing this thing. What were you doing? Like, they've got all kinds of things back there. And, or a trumpet player, tell me about your rotary trumpet. Tell me what's hard. Tell me what's challenging. And bassonists and oboists love to tell you about their reeds. And it's important. Oftentimes when I was a young conductor, I'd be like, why is this happening? And they'd be like, 1 second, there's no shame in starting off working with youth orchestras and with community orchestras because you learn the most. Professional orchestras can compensate in different ways. They can compensate for your weaknesses, whereas those younger orchestras and less professional orchestras will not and cannot. So they're more reliant on you. And so you'll get a better picture, I think, at least I did, of my conducting and what I was doing from those folks that won't just compensate for what you're not doing or you're not doing well. And maybe I've never seen this repertoire before. Perhaps it's their first visitation to some of these bigger works. So for younger musicians, and just be open to learning and all avenues available to you, whether you're actually on the podium or not. And keep playing. If you have a principal instrument, on occasion, I still sub in as a violinist with the Calgary Philharmonic, and I always learn so much, even if it's repertoire that I played many times before. Now, I don't have a lot of time to practice or play all the other things that I'm conducting is super time consuming, but it's one of the most valuable things is to put myself back in the shoes of the player. We can get into conductor brain. We have a schedule, like understandably, we have a deadline. We have all this pressure to create this thing in like 3 days or whatever it is. And so we can sometimes disconnect ourselves, or at least I could sometimes fall into that trap of, just my grocery list and my laundry list for the day of things we need to do and get done and cover, and forget about maybe what the experience of the player that's sitting right there might be feeling and how much impact you have on their experience and their day and their life as an artist. That was how you show up on the podium every day in front of them. So putting yourself back in the position of being a player and observing rehearsals, notice how things land, how instructions that the conductor gives, whether it's orchestra affirming or if it's frustrating the ensemble or just noise and not helpful and everybody's tuned out. It's a fascinating social experiment, putting everyone together in an orchestra and having one person kind of being this kingpin that has influence. And I think at least with my ensemble that I work with regularly, so Allegra Chamber Orchestra and the Vancouver Intercultural Orchestra, I try to, and you can do this with ensembles that, you've developed a relationship with, really have it be more of a collaboration and distribute that influence a little bit more throughout so that your principals know that they have responsibilities and that there are collaborators with you rather than you just being a dictator. But so often when I'm going in and guest conducting, it's difficult to do that. You have unknown ensemble and you just have to call the shots and get things done, like I said, in 3 days or a week or however long you have. It's never long enough. However long you have it, it's never sufficient. So sometimes you just have to jump in there, but it's always nicer when you have more time to actually create those relationships and collaborative feelings between yourself and ideally all of your players, but most notably your principal players. And for practicing, it is a strange thing to do. Of course, you have your analysis, taking apart the score, and there are lots of different ways to study a score, to analyze a score, to break down a score, and that could be that could just be a whole podcast.
Yes. Absolutely. We should do that later.
Yeah. Get a bunch of conductors and we'll just nerd out. And then, gesturally, you do have to work with your body and find your gestures in your body and get comfortable in your body. One of my big challenges being, a tall, skinny, scrawny woman with really long arms was that all of my conducting mentors and teachers, and I say this with all love and respect, but they were short, fat men. They were very different from me physically. Gestures that they would work didn't work for me. And especially, I still feel like I struggled sometimes to convey power, gravitas. Like I said, I'm a tall, skinny woman with abnormally long arms. And so there were things that I would go to coachings and take bits and pieces of, but ultimately I had to figure it out myself. And yeah, that's a lot of ridiculous flailing in front of a mirror. And I think with conducting, there isn't really a set of study books like you have for instruments. You can go and grab Hanon or Shrodiak or Sevchik or any of those things, but we don't really have that. There are different methodologies, but it's not as clear cut for conductors. And so of course you do a lot of observation, you do a lot of creeping other people's videos and to kind of be so what did they do there? And did that work? Or did it not? What does that do to the ensemble? And how does that feel in my body? If I'm not convinced of it, if it's not coming across convincingly in my body, then there's no way I'm going to be able to bring 80 people with me in an orchestra and a chorus. That's not happening. So, it was a lot of getting comfortable in my body, working with my body and experimenting. And then, yes, there are certain things where you have to be kind of clinical about it and you have to be like, this is a formulaic way that you have to conduct this transition. And, it looks like I conduct a lot of new music where, there's not a lot of, I don't mean to say there is an expression, but the complexity dictates that you have to do things in a very straightforward way. And you have to trust that the musicians will take that instruction and make music out of it. So in some ways you have to be very clinical about that and just making sure that your job is to be clear and get out of the way as a person. And so that it's just music that comes out. It's not you and your dramatic gestures. And sometimes it's called for it, but most of the time it's really not. They just need information. And a lot of times extras get in the way. And that's something that I value a lot as a player. It's like, I just need you to show me your idea and where it fits into the big picture.
Yes.
That's what I try to do. I try to take myself out of the picture and just make it about the music and make it about what the musicians need. So that's what I try to do in my practice, often like just taking out extras.
Yeah. We had Cassette Justo Valdez on the podcast. And one of the lines that stuck with me is she said, take your ego out of the music. I think that's good advice for all of us. It doesn't matter what instrument we play or what ensemble we conduct, that it's about the music. It's not about us. So I think that's similar advice to what you're giving. That's so great. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. We're going to wrap up our chat with a few rapid fire questions. So no wrong answers, just go with your gut. Can you point to a moment when you knew you wanted to be a musician?
My first day of youth orchestra rehearsal.
I love it. Favorite piece or song to perform?
That's the hardest question
I know.
It's literally whatever I'm working on at the time. Whether it's a new piece or that's just been composed or something that's been in the canon of repertoire or a pop show. I'm always like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing piece of music.
Yeah, I love it. FestivELLE of Rayaton, when she was asked what's your favorite piece to sing? She goes, the one I'm singing right now. Have you ever been given bad career advice?
So often. I was just thinking about this the other day, and I don't mean to play the gender card, but I can't tell you how many disparaging comments have been made to me as a female conductor over the years, and just about my career path and how female conductors were a fad, and so I should just enjoy it while it lasted, and, things like that. But I think the worst piece of career advice was given to me by someone really, really established in the music community, and that was like, you know what, you should just this all-female orchestra, you should hire them out to you should wear really revealing clothes and hire them out to casinos and stuff, and you'd make a ton of money. And I was like,
oh my God,
you have missed the entire point of my entire life. This is the whole
oh my God.
And if you want to wear clothes, you wear whatever you like and do whatever you like. Casinos can be a good time, but that was totally not the point.
No. Wow. Yeah. I don't know, because we're always asking what's the best career advice you have? And I think people have been given lots of really terrible career advice. I'm fairly young and I've still been given lots of terrible career advice and often unsolicited, advice usually. So then on the flip side, what's your best advice that you can pass on to up and coming musicians?
Well, for me, when I started having success and things started working, and I gauge my success very modestly, I consider myself to be a lifelong apprentice of the craft. But when things started to actually work, started to actually click, is when I started to actually be myself on the podium. And there was a lot of, I won't get into it, but there's a lot of inner, deeper work that you have to do, peeling away layers perhaps that have been imposed on us, throughout the process of just being a human and music school and all those things, or your own expectations of what you think you should be. But when it started to actually work and I started to feel like I was connecting with orchestras, is when I was unapologetically myself and I started to find my own voice. And that's a constant process, of growing and evolving. But really, there's enough fake people creating from a deeper place and from your own unique place. We don't need any more copycat soloists or conductors. Or what we need now is artists that are truly authentic in what they create, and actually really taking that time to discover who you are and what you want to say as an artist. I think for me that was a critical turning point in my career, and like I said, when things started to work. And it's just as important to work on yourself as it is on your art.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I love that advice. Last question. What music are you listening to right now?
Right now, well, as mentioned earlier, I'm a huge fangirl of Julie Nasrallah. So first thing in the morning, I always crank up some Julie Nasrallah and do my chores on CBC Radio too. So that's also very fun. And I'm really loving Carolyn Shaw right now. Like just the music of Carolyn Shaw always just puts me in, I don't know, just transports me. I don't even know how to, I won't try to describe it to people because I'll wreck it. But she's just one of the most interesting, innovative, creative composers I think that's creating right now. And I never know what's going to happen with her compositionally. I never know what to expect. So yeah, I'm loving just diving into Carolyn Shaw when I have some time.
I love that. That's great. And she's such a fabulous composer. Well, thank you so much for coming on Loud and Clear, Janna. I'll have links to all the music and all the things we've referenced in the show notes. And if you're in the Saskatoon area, I really encourage you to go see her live and in action with the SSO Orchestra and the music of ABBA on January 21st. Thank you so much. I hope to have you back again. Thanks for doing this.
Anytime. Thank you so much, Olivia. Take care.
And that is a wrap on my episode with Janna Sailor. I am so thrilled that I was able to chat with her and speak with her about her conducting career and the amazing work that she is a part of with Allegra Chamber Ensemble. So I really encourage you to check out the show notes for the links to the videos of Allegra and have a listen this week. At the time of recording this podcast, I would usually give a call to action and say you need to buy tickets for this upcoming show, but it is sold out. And so if you are the lucky ones that got tickets to the ABBA show with the SSO this weekend, enjoy your concert experience and enjoy the music of ABBA with the SSO under Maestra Janna Sailor. Well, thank you so much for tuning in this week. As always, feel free to leave a 5-star rating and written review. And I encourage you to check out the show notes and let me know what you thought of the show. Thank you to the Saskatoon Symphony Orchestra for sponsoring this podcast. Make sure you head over to saskatoonsymphony.org to purchase tickets for upcoming shows. And if you don't live in the Saskatoon area, you can watch these shows via concert stream by following the link at the top of the website. I'm your host, Olivia Adams. This is Loud and Clear, and you can find me at OA Music Studios on socials. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.